could have had your coffee. That's all you want.
That's all you need to do. That's great. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard you play something extensive.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
He said, well, how do you feel about that? She said, well, is like a rock star over there. They love him so much. She said, in fact, there was some that thought he should run for president. He had nothing.
Are we ready?
Please rise in spirit for our first hymn.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long way from home.
Good morning. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Norman Allen. As many of you know, I am your intern minister. And I am uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable all week, thinking about participating so publicly in something called a white supremacy teach-in. Some of you know that I'm also a writer, so words mean a lot to me. Their nuance, their implications. It's only within the last few weeks, really just a few weeks, that I've started hearing the term white supremacy used in a way that I am not used to and that I am not comfortable with. I hear white supremacy and I think hate groups, hate crimes. I picture skinheads and Nazis. When I heard it applied to my own beloved Unitarian Universalist denomination, I was shocked. I thought they're using it wrong. They're using the wrong words. This is horrible. But I kept an open mind, I hope. I listened, I read a bit. And I started hearing those words differently. I can now just begin to hear white supremacy as a phrase that describes a way of thinking, an underlying perspective. It's something that we may not be aware of, but that we act upon, that I act upon all the time. With each new day, we open our eyes and find ourselves confronted with a million choices about how to proceed. The easy thing, the safe thing, often the reasonable thing, is to proceed as usual, to follow a pattern that has proven productive, even pleasurable. It's often how we get things done. This morning, we're making a very different choice. On this new day, we are joining hundreds of other Unitarian Universalist congregations around the country to shake things up, to shake ourselves up, to take a hard look at those routines and patterns that seem to have worked so well for us, and to ask some tough questions together.
Good morning. My name is Hillary Collins-Gilpatrick. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education here. Welcome. I'm so glad you joined us on this important morning. And like Norman, I'm uncomfortable. I was born and raised in the state of Maine, and then I moved to Vermont, and then I moved to New Hampshire, and those are the top 3 whitest states in America. So this is very necessary work for me, and very difficult work in ways that I'm still learning. But one thing I'm really leaning into and praying on as I do this work is our 7th principle, which is the respect for the interdependent web of life which we are all a part. And that does not mean we are all the same, but it means we are all interconnected. And so what I do affects many of you in ways that we know and see, in ways that we don't know and don't see. And what you do affects many of us. And this is how we live in community together, ebbing and flowing on this web. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I feel like this web becomes a little knotted inside of me, and I might be, you know how when you see a spider web that's sort of broken and kind of just flapping in the wind? Sometimes I feel that way. And I come back to a Buddhist teaching that strengthens me. And it is a teaching about the golden thread within us that starts at the top of our head and goes down across our face, down our chest, through our stomach, down into our legs, into our arms and hands. And that golden thread radiates and strengthens us. But that golden thread sometimes can become knotted and tangled and grow dull and dim. And so as we enter into this morning, where we are very much interconnected with one another, I ask you to take some time with me to breathe and to meditate and to hold in our minds, hearts, and bodies this golden thread. And so I'm going to ask you to get comfortable in your chair. Put your feet on the ground if that's what makes you comfortable. Feel the pull of gravity bringing you back to earth. So much of our lives are spent in our minds, out of touch with the ground. Come back to the ground and take a deep breath, a deep, refreshing breath. And take another deep breath. Imagine that breath going all the way down to the tips of your toes, bringing new energy in, and as you exhale, it expels all the stagnant air and thoughts inside of you. A deep, refreshing breath, bringing you new energy, and a deep exhale, cleaning you out. And with your next breath, I invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And as you take in that deep breath, imagine that air wrapping around that golden thread that is inside of you. Notice that thread. And taking another breath in, letting that air Loosen that thread, untangling those knots, slacking that line that might be so tight and wound up in you. Breathe in and loosen that thread. And breathe out and let that thread expand. Breathe in and loosen that thread, letting it relax your stomach and your heart, but also letting it strengthen your spine. Breathing in and softening your front, exhaling and strengthening your spine. And now as you breathe in, imagine that your breath is causing your golden thread to radiate and shine like wind over a fire, just letting it rise up and radiate. And as you exhale, loosening that thread, letting all of that golden energy expand, opening your mind, tingling your fingertips, strengthening your heart. Strengthen as you breathe in, and shine as you breathe out. Strengthen as you breathe in, and shine as you breathe out. And take one more deep, strong breath. And one more long, shiny exhale. And notice the connections in this room. Opening our eyes now, seeing this remarkable web of life, and coming in to our time of worship and learning.
I invite Jenny Foster and Matthew Heller up to light the chalice. Step into the center. Come in from the margins. I will hold you here. Don't look back or around. Feel my arms. The water is rising. I will hold you as you tremble. I will warm you. Don't look out or away. Life is in here between you and me. In this tiny space where I end and you begin, hope lives. In this precious tiny space, no words need be whispered to tell us we are one. You and I, we make the circle if we choose to. Come, step in. I am waiting for you. We light this chalice, a symbol of our faith and the time we have together. Please rise in body and spirit for our next hymn, 210, Wade in the Water.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in white. light. God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like an Israelite. God's gonna trouble the water. We're gonna wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. It looks like the band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Come on and wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. And God's gonna trouble the water.
Hello, my name is Moyo Myers-Ellis. My family has been here at Cedar Lane since 2012. My children go to a liberal Quaker private school full of progressive families where the importance of diversity is taught from pre-K on. And yet, earlier this year, parents of Black students watched an incredibly painful, heart-wrenching video in which just graduated Black students talked about the ways they felt silenced, marginalized, and dismissed by other students, faculty, and the administration. The question from parents watching was, this video was made 6 months ago. Why are we only seeing this now? Why haven't the board or faculty seen it yet? The answer had to do with scheduling and proper decision-making process. As an alumnus of that school, I recognized the conversations in that video as the same conversations Black students in my class had 25 years ago. Why are these same conversations still happening? Why isn't this community that is fiercely dedicated to equality, reflection, and improvement, they're practitioners of a religion known for its core belief that no one is better than anyone else? Why aren't they doing a better job of eradicating racism and white supremacy within itself, within that community? I love this school community. I grew up in it. I was formed by it. The relationships I've made there as a student and as a parent have sustained me. Yet, this school is also the place where I've learned what it means to parent a child of color in America. It's where I've discovered that sincere and well-intentioned white people, and I'm referring to myself right now, cannot see the center and the margins that exist in every place and context in this country. And we cannot see the way that we reinforce those places and put people into them through our own eyes. The relationships I have with parents and faculty of color at this school have been crucial to see more clearly where I am standing, where my children who are biracial are standing, and what I need to do to make sure I'm standing with them. The school is committed to ensuring that we lift up all of our students, and that's not happening now. But parents, faculty, administration, and the board are engaged in ongoing and widening conversations about how to make this happen. I'm not sure that people thought when the new director of equity and justice was hired a year and a half ago, that he would be focusing on internal equity and justice, but he is. The video that we saw is just one part of his efforts to help the school see the margins and the center in our own community. He is raising up the voices of people of color in the school, and those in power are listening. He is creating openness to change for now. Like our UU community here at Cedar Lane and nationwide, I feel like the school is at a pivot point. Things could go either way. I'm grateful to the school board and administration for seeing the need for this new position, for giving him the new flexibility and power when he said that it was needed, and for staying open to making fundamental changes. I'm holding my breath that they and the rest of the school community will stay committed and engaged, even when the work is painful and uncertain. I am devoted to that community, like Cedar Lane, but I need them also to be devoted to my children.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Good morning. My name is Jim Anderson. My family's been coming to Cedar Lane for about 4 years now. Those of you who know me may think that I'm up here talking about this because of the makeup of my family. But while that may give me some limited insight into the issue, it doesn't change the fact that I have lived my entire life as a white person. My wife and daughters have not. My proximity to them cannot put me into their heads or allow me to live their experiences. I'm up here today as a white person, speaking to mostly other white people. My awareness of these issues is embarrassingly new. I've read a few things, had some conversations. I don't know very much about people who don't look like me. I do know that we seem to be having some difficulty with the language being used to describe some issues around race. Recently, the terms white supremacy and institutional racism have been used to describe us and our faith. I've had conversations with many of you about this, and I've heard about many more. In some cases, these conversations have been awkward and painful. In others, the terms white supremacy and institutional racism have shut down the conversations outright. That's okay, because the conversations have occurred, and conflict can be healthy, but it's also not okay, because it tells us that we can't even agree on language yet with which to define the problem. I get it. In many of our minds, including mine, these terms describe the evil actions of people who support injustice. The terms white supremacy and institutional racism feel too extreme to describe us. They feel over the top in a community that has a Black Lives Matter sign out front, that has ministers of color, that has a board committee dedicated to addressing issues of race and inclusivity. I agree. These terms do feel bad. They make me feel bad. But that doesn't mean they're incorrect. It should hurt when I think that I have been, and continue to be, the beneficiary of a system that prioritizes my comfort over the equality of my wife and children, over the lives of people of color. It makes me sick to my stomach. It's embarrassing that I've lived in this system for so long and only recently began to become aware of it. It's shameful that it has taken the deaths of innocent Black people to make me even start to see how extremely bad things are. The thought that I could accurately be described as a white supremacist hurts. I hate it. But just because I hate something doesn't make it false. It is right that I feel sick and shameful. These are appropriate reactions to what is happening. Some argue that using the terms white supremacy and institutional racism about ourselves is for shock value, that they're too divisive, that their use will hurt membership and harm our standing among other faiths. It may do all these things. But is it so unreasonable to entertain the idea that these things are shocking because they're true, that the shock is real and not manufactured? Just because something could be divisive or politically harmful doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing to do. To this I would ask, with whom are we concerned about dividing? People who value their political power above equality, or oppressed people who are struggling for a seat at the table? Whose membership in our faith needs safeguarding? People who would threaten to leave because we are attempting to be radically inclusive? Or black and brown people in search of a faith willing to risk its own clout to improve their lives? I think white supremacy and institutional racism are terms we should be using. I came to this opinion through discomfort and difficult conversations in which neither side gave up. Black and brown people are trying to tell us about a system that is designed to harm them, about a system that is, by design, meant to be invisible to us. We need to listen, and we need to hear. I won't pretend to understand any of this perfectly, but here's what I think I do understand. People of color with whom I share a faith and about whom I care have been hurt. I know this because they are telling me, and I am trying to listen. Although it makes me uncomfortable, this is the language they are saying is appropriate. And I am not willing to minimize their concerns, their voices, or their pain in order to maintain my own comfort. These are the terms they are saying we should use, and they are willing to teach us why. As we continue these conversations, I will be embarrassed and I will feel shame. I intend to live with that discomfort, to recognize its existence as a signal that maybe I'm on the right track. I will approach things with as much courage as I can muster. I will listen in an effort to really hear, and I will try to assume good intentions on the part of those who disagree with me. I hope you will join me. Thank you.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Hathaway. I've been a member here at Cedar Lane for 40 years. Since 1980, that might be wrong. Might be more than that. Until I moved to Oakland, California back in the mid-1950s, I lived in small towns in Connecticut, Ohio, and Washington State. I had never met a black person because none lived in my northern small towns. During my high school and college years, the civil rights movement was going on, but I was preoccupied with getting educated, growing up, choosing a career, getting married. The term white supremacy back then meant to me the Ku Klux Klan, pointed white hoods, burning crosses and lynchings, African Americans being hosed and beaten and humiliated, and mostly in the South. And that, the 1960s, was changing. then I got busy in between with children and life. And I think my recent interest in racial matters began with the murder of Trayvon Martin in Florida and the unfairness of the outcome of that, the continued shootings, and the rise of Black Lives Matter. By accident, I heard and enrolled in a month-long online course on racism, which contained lots of readings and videos and interviews, and it opened my eyes a great deal. About that time, Zora Hamza, an outspoken Black woman, spent a year here as our intern minister. She used the term white supremacy regularly, and I would cringe every time she said it. I didn't want to think of myself in the same category as the Klan. It wasn't a term I was used to hearing in my mostly white world. I'm getting used to it. In one chapel service, Zora had us close our eyes and hold up our hands to answer yes or no to certain questions she asked. One of them was, had you read any books by a Black author recently? And I had to answer no. This is why I decided to start a Writers of Color book club here at Cedar Lane, and that's been going for 2 years. Each book selection gives us some insight into the feelings of the characters and the author's thoughts, whether it be an African American, an Arab Muslim, a Latino, or an indigenous native of America. I also learned from Zora that Black people do not like to have to educate white people about race. It's an extra burden to them. So what we white people need to do is help educate ourselves and each other about white supremacy. So a particularly helpful article that I read while I was taking the class was a case for reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates in the June 2014 issue of Atlantic Magazine, which gives a good summary of history of African Americans in this country, and particularly the white supremacy that permeates every structure in our society. If we think of our own lives, we can recognize times when our path has been made easier by our white privilege. I know 3 of my main jobs that I had in my life were at least in part due to tips from my white friends. I also learned on the online course that there has been a study that has shown that resumes of people with white-sounding names are 50% more likely to be called back by personnel directors, as in an Emily over a Letitia. What about Cedar Lane? As with all parts of society, like the schools, the retail stores, the police department, it probably has white supremacy built into it. Its neighborhood, its membership, its style of service, its staffing and music, its auction, its adult education, its wealth. We are making progress in changing some of these things to make it a more multicultural and welcoming place. What more could we do to live up to our UU principles of honoring the inherent worth and dignity of every person and pursuing justice for all? This is what keeps me involved in social justice. One thing I've been doing is wearing my Black Lives Matter pin daily. It reminds me that I should live up to my UU principles and occasionally encourages a conversation with someone. And it is my commitment to speak up if I see an injustice. And I thought of something after the last service. I just want to add, I went down to a Black Lives Matter march maybe a year or two ago, and I had two signs actually: Black Lives Matter and thank you. Well, gosh, I can't remember the word now, but thanking those good police. And on my way back home on the metro, I heard this little voice, and it was a young black boy, maybe 13. He was kind of short still. And he had seen my sign, and he quietly said, "Thank you, ma'am." And it made me think that he probably doesn't even know if he is going to make it to age 18. Thank you.
Thank you, Moyo, Jim, and Marilyn, for your willingness to lean into your discomfort today, for saying yes when we invited you to share with your fellow congregants, and for your willingness to take that risk and to share from the depths of your hearts where you are, and how being in the struggle is an integral part of our journey toward wholeness. Our Share the Plate today is with Action in Montgomery, AIM, a community-based organization that has been doing work in our county for the past 20 years around affordable housing, after-school care, and now around metro transit. Cedar Lane is a founding member of AIM, and this morning we have someone who has been impacted by the metro transit system and who's also involved with AIM, Ogechi Akalaberry. I hope I got your name right. Sort of. Thank you. And also Ogechi's mom, Angela, and sister, Neka, are here. I'd like to invite you to come forward and share a bit about what your journey has been, figuratively and literally. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ogechi Akalaberry. I'm a member of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church in Gaithersburg, so a little bit north from here. And I'm also a member of the AIM strategy team, and I've been involved with AIM for about 3.5 years now. I've always been a commuter. I've started riding the bus with my mom at a very young age, and I started riding the bus by myself at around 14. That was around the time of high school, and summer programs and school events called for me to be a little bit more independent, especially with transportation. I currently commute to work almost daily using the ride-on bus system here in Montgomery County. It takes me about 3 buses to get to work every morning, and after work, I use the bus system or the metro to go to the gym, meetings, or wherever I'd like to go. As a county employee, one of the perks I have is to ride the ride-on bus system for free. I actually really do like being a commuter, even though sometimes that gets a bad rap. I like the opportunity to sit and rest before I have to go into work. I like the opportunity to pray or meditate or just calm myself in the morning. Of course, I don't like the fact that sometimes that 65 express bus route to Shady Grove might run late and it throws off my whole cycle of buses. But it beats the $18 Uber ride or having to ask someone for a ride to work. What I do like about being a commuter besides the rest is that I can see the diversity of the commuters on the bus with me. I'm an avid user of the Metro bus and railroad system, as well as my sister, who takes the bus multiple times a week to commute from Montgomery Village to Tyson's Corner. That's about a 2.5-hour commute. Who are the types of people that I see on the bus? I see fellow county workers, I see federal government workers and contractors headed to work or the MARC train. I see students, so many students, from elementary to college level. I see day laborers, I see travelers headed to the Metro. Public transit is meant to be an equitable service to serve all types of people, and they rely on it in the same way, whether they're the museum goer, or the person going to the Nats or Capitals games, or someone like my sister who, fresh out of college, has her first job in a field that she's interested in. Who works for the Metro? When I think of Metro workers, I think of the negative reputation they get of always during construction, of inconveniencing us. But I also think of my friend Melvin, who is around my same age. He used to work fixing cars at Nissan, and he prides himself in being able to use that skill to have a high-quality middle-class job. He knows that he could hopefully still have a pension and provide for his future, his family and his future many years to come. So how does this affect this wealthy area of Bethesda? Oftentimes, I participate in research studies in NIH just down the street, and to go there, rather than fight with the traffic if I ever have a ride, I take the J7 or the J9 from Lake Forest Mall, and it takes me straight down HOV Lane to NIH Medical Center right here. Who else is on that bus with me? There are nurses, there are researchers, there are interns. A lot of the nurses that I encounter when I do visit there, they tell me they take that same bus route. It helps them, they don't have to deal with the horrible traffic, but that's one of the routes that are going to be cut. The general manager has a proposal, and as part of that proposal are bus cuts and fare raises every 2 years. So the people that work at the NIH, they don't have that convenience anymore. That adds to further traffic and adds to further environmental issues. So as a result, they either have to take an Uber ride, drive, or find alternative bus routes. When I attend AIM meetings, I take the Q buses that take me from Shady Grove straight down Veersmill Road to different parishes that we have meetings in Silver Spring. Those buses are looking to be reduced in times. So if the meeting runs late, I'm kind of out of luck. And people that work late night shifts in hospitals or in hotels or restaurants that we attend and are serviced by are also out of luck. A better, equitable metro system impacts my life. It impacts the community, and it impacts the workers who rely on quality jobs. All of this shapes the social economic makeup of Montgomery County. We pride ourselves in being a diverse community, but do we pride ourselves in standing up for equitable transit? Transit is one of the factors that are what we call a social determinant. That social determinant determines the quality of life for people, and without that equitable access to transit, the burden falls heavily on the lower and lower middle class individuals. That burden disproportionately affects their quality of life. It disproportionately affects their access to services and their access to quality jobs. So here at AIM, we've joined with Virginia and DC to try to bring ourselves to the table with the general manager and other people that are power players in the region. And we want to make sure that equity is part of the general manager's plan, that these fare cuts do not happen, that we present a better way, because whether you realize it or not, your community will change because of this, and where Montgomery County sees itself in the next 20 years will also change. Thank you.
The offering to support the work of Action in Montgomery and the ongoing mission and ministry of Cedar Lane will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you.
The refrain for this song, I'm going to take us all, is in your order of celebration. We'd like you to join in with Elise on that refrain. Thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
We need the Buddhist and the Baptist, Quakers and Catholics too, atheists and agnostics, Muslims and Jews. We need people of all nations, all colors and all creeds. Need to stay eye to eye and join in unity. Gonna take us all to make a change. Take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets. Gonna take us all. It's gonna take us all. We need the immigrants and the unions, Greens and the gays, hip-hoppers and the beboppers and the women for equal pay. Farm workers out in the sun, homeless out in the rain. The seniors and the soccer moms, and a world that is humane. Gonna take us all to make a change. Take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets. Gonna take us all. Gonna take us all. Steve. We need your friends and your neighbors, poets and the painters, socialists and the anarchists, pacifists and the humanists. Every culture and community takes black and white and brown. Sometimes we won't see eye to eye, but we stand on common ground. Gonna take us all to make a change. Take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets. Gonna take us all. Gonna take us all to make a change. Take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets. Gonna take us all. Gonna take us all. Gonna take us all.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. We now come to a time in our service that we have set aside for a conversation with one another. We're going to break free of these puritanical rows and turn and switch our chairs around, maybe make some circles. And what we're asking is for us all to return to the words shared in our chalice lighting, which is to step into the center, to step out of the margins, and to come in here and hold here. We've shed some light on some areas in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts that are uncomfortable for us to think about, that are confusing for us to think about, that we have a lot of thoughts about. And so now it's time to talk to one another and share how you are feeling right now. What do you feel you need right now? And what do you feel you need to do right now? Is there things here at Cedar Lane that you would like to see happen? Are there things that are helping you? Where are you when you step into the center? And what do you find there? It's a big question, but see if you can find some words to it with your neighbors in our beloved community right now. And I invite any of our members and friends who are people of color and would like some community to join Reverend Archene in the back of the sanctuary. You are welcome to hang with her during this time. Thank you.
Let's take another 3 minutes. What's that? Thank you. Friends, if we could wrap up your conversation and bring it to a close. Thank you. Thank you for spending time with one another. And now if we can return to this space.
Come back on the inside.
And return your chairs. And let us recenter ourselves for a few moments. Get comfortable as much as you can in those uncomfortable chairs. Place your feet on the floor. Close your eyes. Lower your chin. Relax your shoulders. Let them slump, with your hands resting comfortably on your lap. And take a deep, long, cleansing breath. Breathe in. Hold it for a moment. And then breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And as you go deeper within to that place of silence and honesty, of courage and comfort, hope and connection, I invite you to once again connect with that golden thread that is within us, going from head through our body, through our toes and our fingers, let us connect and be aware of breath, body, and heart. And as you continue to pay attention to your breathing, staying centered in mind, body, and spirit, please repeat these words quietly to yourselves. May I be well, calm, happy, healthy in mind, body, and spirit. May I be protected from internal and external harm. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful. Now bring to mind a perception or feeling about race. Your race. When did you first become aware? Think back to that moment. Think about how racism, white supremacy, white privilege affect you, or how they may affect others you know and love in your lives. To help you bring it to mind, think of a situation that reminded you of your race or your privilege or lack thereof. Try to notice the water in which we all swim. Notice how this feeling feels, not just in your thinking mind, but within your being, within your heart. The feeling of tightening up, a twinge of anxiety or fear, a feeling of guilt or shame, a heavy feeling of sadness, a queasy feeling of worry, or a burning feeling of anger. Bring awareness to the emotion as you feel it within, with a sense of deep acceptance, loving kindness, and compassion. Like a friend being quietly present to a struggling friend without being enmeshed in the feeling, without rejecting it, without trying to solve or change or fix anything about it, without ruminating and intellectualizing about why you have it. Try not to push it away. Just be with this feeling. Try to be present. Lean into your discomfort with a sense of acceptance and loving kindness toward it. Be aware of what it feels like within. Accept whatever feelings further arise in a gently welcoming way without trying to solve or change or suppress them. And now, bring to mind a person you know or a group whose suffering deeply touches your heart, imagining and sensing the suffering, the oppression, the prejudice, the marginalization that they must be experiencing. Ask yourself, how must it feel for them in heart and mind, in body and spirit, to be living in that reality day in and day out? What feelings might be arising for them that are associated with their suffering? Take some time to deepen your empathy in this way. Let the power of this empathy generate an intense compassion from your heart that wishes them free of all the pain and suffering that impedes their well-being, happiness, and thriving. De-center yourself so the center can be expanded where there are no longer any margins, and that the center holds the margins. Let this wish and energy of compassion join with that of your neighbors, and let it radiate powerfully to that person or group, pervading their whole body, mind, and world. Imagine that this radiant energy becomes every means needed to release them from inner and outer causes of their suffering into deep joy and thriving. And now let these images fade, and let yourself just merge into oneness with that loving energy. Let your heart and mind and body relax and fall completely open, and say to yourself and to the world, may all be well, calm, happy, healthy in mind, body, and spirit. May all be protected from internal and external harm. May all be filled with loving kindness and compassion. May all be peaceful. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So may it be. Blessed be. And now let us rise in body and or in spirit to sing together, Wake Now, My Senses.
Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Lighten my pathway with radiant sphere. Mingle thy calling with all who will share. Earth toward a planet transformed by our care.
There's so much work to do.
We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy.
Help us hold fast to our visions of what can be.
May we see the hope in our history
and find the courage and the voice
to work for that constant rebirth
of freedom and justice.
That is our dream. Please be seated for the postlude.